Have you ever felt like you start the day carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders? That when you open your eyes, anxiety and fear are already there, wanting to take over your heart? What if I told you that there is a simple way to change this feeling first thing in the morning, before you even set foot on the ground? Psalm 91 offers exactly that. A powerful prayer that not only protects you, but also strengthens your faith, guides you, and brings inexplicable peace. God is ready to cover you with His protection, but are you prepared to seek this connection with Him from the first moment of your day? Let's explore together how this psalm can become your fortress and your source of confidence, guiding you towards a journey of unshakable faith. Because when you start the day with God, life will never be the same again. At dawn, the soul longs for a safe haven, a place where it can rest before even facing the challenges of the day. Psalm 91 presents itself as this unshakable fortress, a promise from God to those who choose to dwell under His protection. Those who place their faith in the Almighty find rest in the shadow of the Almighty, far from fear and uncertainty. It is an invitation to begin the day not with anxiety, but with prayer, placing each thought and each step in the hands of God. Like a child who trusts in the embrace of the Father, so should be the daily surrender of those who seek connection with the Lord. When meditating on the words of this psalm, one realizes that true security does not come from external circumstances, but from the constant presence of God. Those who make the Lord their home rest in His faithfulness, knowing that no snare of the enemy can prevail. Just like Daniel, who remained steadfast in prayer even in the face of the lion's den, every Christian is called to trust regardless of adversity. Instead of starting the day consumed by worries, how about starting with a sincere prayer, declaring that God is your refuge and strength? Small gestures like this strengthen faith and bring peace to the soul. Every morning, the spiritual battle begins even before the first commitment of the day. Anxious thoughts try to take over the heart. Silent fears whisper uncertainties. But those who seek God's presence are clothed with strength. Jesus taught us to begin the day in communion with the Father, withdrawing to pray before the crowds surround us. In the same way, those who seek spiritual growth need to cultivate this sacred habit by bending the knees and declaring the promises of Psalm 91. The soul aligns itself with the purpose of life outlined by God, preparing itself to face any challenge with faith and courage. In the walk of faith, divine protection is not just a distant promise, but a reality for those who trust in God. Psalm 91 assures us that those who dwell in the secret place of the Most High are kept under His wings, far from the terror that plagues the world. This means that, regardless of the circumstances, there is a place of safe refuge for those who put their trust in the Lord. Just as a father protects his child from the dangers of the night, God surrounds His children with love and care. Morning prayer, then, becomes an act of surrender, an acknowledgement that true security comes from heaven. Divine protection, however, does not nullify life's challenges. Even though there are trials, those who walk in faith know that they are not alone. Joseph was sold by his brothers, faced injustice and imprisonment, but at each stage God protected him and raised him to the purpose He had prepared for him. In the same way, prayer based on Psalm 91 strengthens the heart to face difficulties without fear. When a Christian declares that God is his strength, he is not just expressing words, but activating a faith that changes realities. This manifests itself in actions, trusting more, complaining less, and acting with the certainty that God is in control. Perhaps you have noticed that ultimately things seem more difficult than they should be. Unexplained fatigue, worries that arise out of nowhere, constant challenges, and even though you try to maintain your faith, you feel that there is something trying to weaken you. The good news is that we can strengthen our spiritual life and learn to keep our peace, our faith, and our family protected. Imagine waking up every day with peace in your heart, knowing that your life is protected and strengthened spiritually. Imagine no longer feeling the weight of envy, negative words, and difficulties that imprison you. We present the ebook, Spiritual Shielding, Defense Against Evil Energies and Intentions, a complete and transformative guide that will teach you to identify and defend yourself from spiritual attacks, protecting your life, your family, and your home against any negative influence. This book was written for people who want to stop suffering in silence and want to blind their faith, once and for all removing the weight of envy, negative words, and evil spiritual forces. If you want peace, strength, and true spiritual protection, this ebook is for you. Then click on the link in the first comment, and for a symbolic value, you can transform and protect yourself and your family. Amen. Continuing, the day may bring unexpected challenges, but those who begin their journey with God walk under invisible but powerful protection. The Lord's promises are like a shield that prevents evil from prevailing over those who seek Him. In traffic, at work, in the family, there are visible and invisible dangers, but prayer is the means by which everything is placed in God's hands. Just as Moses saw the sea part before his step of faith, those who trust in the Lord will see doors open where there seemed to be no way out. And throughout the day, each situation becomes a reminder of God's constant presence. Spiritual peace is not found in the absence of problems, but in the certainty that God is present in the midst of them. Psalm 91 reminds us that he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High can rest, for he is under the shadow of the Almighty. This means that even when the storms of life come, there is a safe place for the soul to rest. Jesus demonstrated this when he slept in the boat in the midst of the storm, while the disciples were overcome with fear. He knew that nothing could take him away from the Father's plan. In the same way, those who trust in the Lord find a peace that surpasses all understanding, a deep rest in faith. This peace does not come from favorable circumstances, but from an unshakable connection with God. When Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, he did not despair, because he knew in whom he had placed his faith. Daily prayer creates this confidence, strengthening the spirit to face any challenge. By beginning the day in communion with God, surrendering worries, and giving thanks for blessings, the heart aligns itself with God's will. Small habits make all the difference. Reading biblical passages such as Philippians 4 verses 6 to 7, which teaches us not to be anxious, or meditating on Psalm 23, which reminds us that the Lord guides each step. When we experience this peace, it overflows into all areas of our lives. At work, in relationships, in daily decisions, those who seek God's presence walk with serenity. Instead of reacting with fear or anxiety, they learn to rest in the Lord's promises. And this confidence becomes a testimony to others, because a heart at peace enlightens those around them. Imagine the strength of a Christian who, even in the midst of tribulations, remains calm and hopeful. This is true security, a faith that does not waver, because it is anchored in the presence of the Almighty. Trusting in God is not just a momentary feeling, but a daily choice. Psalm 91 reinforces that those who make the Lord their refuge live under His protection, free from the fear that paralyzes. But this trust needs to be exercised like a muscle that grows stronger with use. Abraham had a trust when God asked him to leave his land without knowing where he would go. Moses had to trust when he lifted his staff before the Red Sea. In the same way, every Christian is called to live by faith, surrendering their plans to God and believing that He works all things together for the good of those who love Him. This trust is manifested in concrete actions. Instead of clinging to anxiety about the future, Christians learn to pray with faith, placing their needs before God. Instead of despairing when faced with a closed door, they believe that God will open a better way. When David faced Goliath, he did not trust in his own strength, but in the Lord of hosts. Thus, those who seek spiritual growth learn to act with this same conviction, facing challenges without fear, waiting on God's timing, and walking with the certainty that He is faithful. Prayer is one of the main ways in which this trust is strengthened. Starting the day by declaring the promises of Psalm 91 is not just a habit, but an exercise of faith. The moment a person places themselves before God, they recognize that they do not need to carry their burdens alone. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11 verse 28. This is the invitation to rest in the Lord, to trust that He guides each step. And when this surrender happens, life becomes lighter because the heart learns to rest in the divine promises. Prayer is not just a request, but a deep dialogue with God, a moment of connection that transforms the soul. Psalm 91 teaches us that there is power in communion with the Almighty, because those who dwell in His presence find security and direction. It is no wonder that Jesus, even though He was the Son of God, set aside time to pray, seeking strength and wisdom to fulfill His mission. Thus, every Christian is called to live this same reality, making prayer a daily practice. Instead of just talking to God in times of need, it is necessary to cultivate this intimacy constantly, opening our hearts with sincerity. This conversation with God does not need to be complex or full of formalities. The important thing is that it is sincere and comes from a heart. Hannah, mother of the prophet Samuel, prayed silently and filled with tears, and God heard her. David, in his Psalms, cried, thanked, and worshipped, and his life was marked by the divine presence. Likewise, daily prayer can be done anywhere, upon waking, before important decisions, on the way to work, or in moments of silence. The essential thing is that it be a time of true surrender, recognizing that God is always ready to listen. Morning prayer has a special power because it aligns the heart with God's purposes before the day begins. By praying first thing in the morning, the mind is filled with faith and confidence, preparing it to face any situation. Psalm 9:1 can be declared as a spiritual shield, reaffirming that God watches over and protects His children. Furthermore, by interceding for loved ones, family, and the challenges that lie ahead, prayer becomes an act of love. Those who start the day this way not only walk with greater peace, but also spread that peace to those around them. The security of being under the care of the Almighty brings a peace that the world cannot offer. Psalm 91 is a declaration of absolute trust in God, a reminder that those who walk in His presence are never forsaken. Just as a shepherd guides his sheep and protects them from the dangers of the path, God guides those who trust in Him. This means that, regardless of what happens around them, there is a safe haven for those who place their faith in the Lord. Prayer, then, becomes an act of refuge, a moment of rest in the certainty that God takes care of every detail of life. But this security does not mean the absence of struggles. The Bible is full of stories of men and women who faced challenges but were sustained by the hand of God. Joseph was betrayed and wronged, but each trial brought him closer to the divine purpose. Paul faced persecution and imprisonment, but he never lost the certainty that he was kept by God. The prayer based on Psalm 91 is a reminder that no adversity is greater than the power of the Lord. Therefore, each morning should be started with this truth in our hearts. God is in control, and nothing can take those who love Him out of His hands. This trust translates into a lighter life, where fear does not dominate and anxiety does not steal peace. When the heart is firmly anchored in God, the worries of the world lose their power. This does not mean that problems disappear, but that they are faced with a new perspective, that of someone who knows he has a loving and powerful Father. That is why morning prayer should be a daily commitment, a reminder that no matter what happens, God has already gone ahead, preparing the way. And this certainty transforms everything. Prayer not only strengthens faith, but also opens doors to divine wisdom. Those who seek God with all their hearts receive not only protection, but also discernment to walk according to His will. Psalm 91 does not only speak of deliverance, but of a deep relationship with the Creator. Jesus, when teaching His disciples, constantly led them to a life of intimacy with the Father. This daily connection is essential for those who desire spiritual growth and purpose in life. Morning prayer, therefore, should not be seen as a simple routine, but as a sacred encounter where the soul surrenders to the guidance of the Almighty. Many seek answers for their lives, without realizing that the key to wisdom lies in communion with God. Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, did not ask for riches or fame, but for understanding to govern according to the will of the Lord. And because of this choice, God not only gave him wisdom, but also blessings that he never imagined. In the same way, those who pray in the morning seeking divine guidance will find answers that human logic cannot offer. Before making important decisions, it is essential to stop, pray, and ask the Lord for discernment. A true connection with God transforms the way we see life. Those who cultivate this relationship learn to see beyond momentary difficulties and trust in the Father's plans. Instead of acting on impulse or fear, we learn to wait on God's timing, knowing that He always has the best in mind. When prayer becomes a priority, our hearts are filled with faith, and our lives begin to reflect the presence of the Lord in every detail. And this daily search, this desire to be closer to God, is what differentiates those who live only religiously from those who experience true spiritual growth. Faith is not a passing feeling, but a lifestyle that shapes every thought, word, and action. Psalm 91 invites us to trust fully in God's presence and care, reminding us that He is a safe refuge in all circumstances. But this trust needs to be lived out in our daily lives, in small and large decisions. It is easy to say that one believes in God when everything is going well, but the true test of faith comes in times of uncertainty. Just as Peter had to keep his eyes fixed on Jesus to walk on water, every Christian is called to remain steadfast, even when the winds blow strong. This faith is strengthened in the daily practice of prayer and surrender. Fear often tries to take over the heart, bringing doubts and insecurities, but those who cling to the Lord's promises find the strength to carry on. Job, even after losing everything, declared, "I know that my Redeemer lives." Job 19, verse 25. This is the faith that transcends circumstances, that sees beyond pain and suffering. When one begins the day in prayer, surrendering each thought and each step to God, life takes on new meaning. Trust in the Lord becomes the anchor that prevents the soul from being carried away by the storms. And this faith not only sustains, but also inspires. Those who walk with God reflect His light, becoming a living testimony to those around them. In the workplace, in the family, among friends, God's presence manifests itself through words and actions. When someone chooses to trust in God instead of despairing, to act with love instead of retaliating, or to remain at peace in the face of difficulties, they're showing the world the true essence of spirituality. Therefore, each morning is an opportunity to reaffirm this faith, to live with purpose, and to connect, once again, with the Creator. Now that you have discovered the power of starting your day with the prayer of Psalm 91, the question is, will you let this message transform your life, or will you continue carrying the weight alone? God's protection is within your reach. Just open your heart and trust in His presence. Remember, He never abandons you and is always ready to guide you, protect you, and give you the wisdom you need. So, why not say this prayer as soon as you wake up and feel the difference it can make in your day? If you felt that this message touched your heart, subscribe to the channel right now and turn on notifications so you don't miss any more teachings that can change your life. And remember, the journey of faith is ongoing. So what are you waiting for to take the next step with God? Comment below what else you would like to learn and share this message with those who also need this connection. Let's together, in faith, seek God's protection and wisdom for the days ahead.